He paid almost nothing for the land and expected nothing from it, just quiet and dust. But inside the old barn stood a white horse that looked straight at him like it knew his past. When he whispered, "Why are you here?" the horse stepped back and revealed a loose plank on the floor. Something waited under that wood, something that had his family's name on it. He signed the papers with a dull pen and a tired hand, telling himself it was only land, nothing more. The road in was slow and bumpy, the kind that made thoughts fall out one by one until only silence stayed. When he reached the gate, it sagged the way his faith did, still standing but not by much. "All right," he said to the empty field. "Let's see what I bought." The house leaned, the porch groaned, and the windows wore a film that turned sky into gray. He wasn't here for charm. He was here to be left alone. He walked past the house toward the barn because the barn at least still looked honest. The doors stuck for a second, then gave with a long breath. A white horse stood inside, calm as morning. No saddle. No rope. Just a clean coat and clear eyes that settled on him and did not blink. "You from the neighbor's place?" he asked, trying to sound steady. The horse flicked an ear and shifted its weight, as if it understood the question and chose not to answer. He checked for a brand or tag. There was a worn leather halter with a tiny metal plate. He rubbed the dust off with his thumb. 2 letters showed through, VH. His mouth went dry. Those were his father's initials. "Impossible," he said. He never kept a white. The horse stepped away, slow and sure, and his hoof caught the edge of a floorboard. It lifted a little, then settled. He knelt and pressed it. Loose. Under the plank, he saw the corner of an envelope sealed with tape that had turned amber. He pulled it free and read the first line written in a neat, careful hand. "If you found the horse, you're ready to hear the truth." His hand shook a little as he tore the rest of the tape. The envelope felt too light for something that carried so much weight. Inside was a single folded page, brittle at the edges but written in ink that had not faded. He opened it slowly, expecting dates or instructions, but the first line stopped him cold. "I couldn't tell you when you were young. I hoped you would never come back here." He stared at the words. The writing was familiar, sharp strokes, leaning slightly to the right. His father always wrote like that. He read further, his breath caught between anger and confusion. "You will see things on this land that don't match what you remember. Whatever you find, remember I tried to protect you." He closed the letter for a moment and looked at the horse. "Protect me from what?" he asked, voice low. The horse only blinked, steady and calm, like it was waiting for him to continue reading. He walked outside for a clearer breath, but the quiet ranch seemed heavier than before. The wind pushed dry grass across the ground in slow waves. Nothing looked dangerous. Nothing looked worth hiding. And yet his father had never been a man who wrote for no reason. He went back to the barn and read the last lines. "If the horse stayed, then the truth stayed too. Follow him. Don't ignore where he takes you." He swallowed hard. "Follow him where?" he muttered. The horse lifted its head and looked toward the far side of the property, a direction he hadn't even walked yet. A small path ran between 2 leaning fences, barely visible, swallowed by weeds. "You want me to go there?" he asked. The horse stepped toward the path, slow, certain. He hesitated. He wasn't ready. Not yet. He needed to understand what his father had done on this land, and why the horse seemed to know more about it than he ever did. He followed the horse only a few steps before stopping. Something inside him wanted to run back to the truck, pretend he never saw the letter, never opened that barn door. But the horse waited, standing still on the narrow path like it had all the time in the world. "All right," he said under his breath. "I'm coming." The path led past an old fence line where the wood had rotted into soft splinters. His boots sank into patches of dry soil. The ranch looked the same in every direction except where the horse guided him. That part looked like it had been avoided for years, even by the wind. Halfway down the path, he saw something strange. A small metal pail turned upside down near a clump of wild grass. It didn't look old. Someone had placed it there on purpose. He lifted it carefully. Underneath was a piece of cloth wrapped around a stone. He unwrapped the cloth with slow fingers. It was a torn corner of an old jacket, the kind ranch hands wore decades ago. His chest tightened. He knew that fabric pattern. His father had one just like it. "Why would he hide this?" he whispered. The horse snorted softly and nudged the ground beside him. He brushed the dirt away with his hand, expecting more scraps or junk. Instead, he uncovered a small wooden marker buried almost flush with the earth. No name. No date. Just a single carved line across the top, like someone planned to finish it but never returned. He sat back on his heels. "This was meant to be a grave," he said without thinking. The horse stepped closer, lowering its head toward the marker. Who? He asked, voice cracking. Who was supposed to be here? The horse didn't answer, but its stillness felt like an answer in itself, like it had been guarding this spot for years, waiting for the one person who needed to see it. He stood slowly, the weight of the hidden marker heavy in his chest. What did you hide, Dad? He whispered. And why was the horse the only one who knew? He walked back a few steps, trying to breathe, but the ranch felt different now. It wasn't just old. It was holding something back. He looked at the horse, and for the first time, the animal seemed almost restless, shifting its weight, watching him like it needed him to keep moving. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. Just give me a second. He rubbed the dust off his palms and looked down the rest of the path. Far ahead, he could see the corner of an old shed leaning to one side. He didn't remember seeing it on the survey papers, and the real estate listing never mentioned it. That alone made his steps slower and heavier. When he reached it, he pulled the door, but the hinges resisted. He pushed harder, and the door opened with a dry crack. Inside, nothing. Just a few broken boards, a metal hook on the wall, and a dark stain on the floor that looked like years of oil spills. He stepped inside, brushing away cobwebs. As he walked, one floorboard bent under his weight and squeaked louder than the rest. He pressed it with his boot again. Hollow. He crouched and scraped the dirt out of the gap. Under the board sat a small tin box, rusted around the edges. He lifted it, surprised at the weight. Another gift from you, Dad? He said under his breath. When he opened it, he found 3 items. A folded paper, a small brass key, and a thin strip of leather that looked like it had been torn from a saddle. He unfolded the paper first. It was only one sentence, written in his father's hand. Do not trust the story people told you. His throat tightened. Story about what? Behind him, the horse let out a low sound, almost a call. He stepped outside, holding the key between his fingers. The horse walked a few paces away, then stopped and looked back at him. You're leading me somewhere, he said. He pocketed the key and followed the horse deeper into the untouched part of the land, knowing the next piece wouldn't be simple, and also knowing he no longer wanted simple. The horse moved at a steady pace, not fast, not slow, just certain. He kept a few steps behind, gripping the brass key in his pocket. The land grew rougher as they went, scattered with old fence wire and patches of dry brush. He didn't remember any of this from his childhood visits, but then again, no one had let him explore this side of the ranch back then. His father always said, "Stay where I can see you." Now he wondered what his father had been afraid he might see. The horse stopped near a fallen tree trunk bleached white by sun and time. Behind it stood a post, short, cut clean, not broken. He brushed the dirt away around its base and found what looked like the top of a padlock, rusted but still attached to a metal latch buried in soil. A locked post, he said, frowning. That doesn't make sense. He used a rock to clear more dirt until the outline of an old wooden hatch appeared, almost invisible under years of dust and weeds. His pulse quickened. The latch had a tiny keyhole. He took the brass key from his pocket, hesitating for a moment. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. The horse stepped closer, pressing its muzzle gently against his shoulder as if urging him forward. He slid the key in. It turned with a soft click, too smooth for something that had been buried for years. Someone had oiled it. Someone had planned for this moment. He pulled the hatch upward. A rush of cool air came from below, carrying a faint smell of earth and old wood. A wooden staircase led down into darkness. He looked at the horse. He built this. But why would he hide it from everyone, including me? The horse didn't move, didn't blink, only watched him with steady eyes. He tightened his jaw. All right. Let's see what he left behind. He took the first step down, knowing whatever waited below wasn't just a secret. It was a part of his life he never knew existed. The steps creaked under his boots, each one softer and colder than the last. The air grew still as he reached the bottom, where the narrow space opened into a small room. It wasn't a cellar. It looked too intentional, too carefully made. Wooden beams supported the ceiling and old lantern hooks hung from the walls. Someone had used this place many times. He held his phone up for light. Dust floated through the beam in slow circles. On the far wall, a large trunk rested beneath a sheet that had turned the color of ash. He pulled the fabric off, coughing as dust rose around him. The trunk had no lock. Just 2 metal latches. He hesitated before lifting the lid. Inside were stacks of notebooks tied with twine, a bundle of letters wrapped in plastic, and a single framed photograph lying face down. He picked up the frame first. His hands felt heavy. He turned it over. His father stood beside another man, tall, smiling, one hand resting on the neck of a white horse. The same white horse now waiting above ground. His father looked younger, almost calm. The man beside him looked proud. He whispered, "Who are you?" He set the photo aside and reached for the notebooks. The top one had a date on it, almost 30 years old. The first page held a line in his father's writing. "I made a mistake I can't undo. I can only protect what is left." As he flipped through the pages, he found notes about the ranch, land boundaries, repairs, and expenses. But deeper into the notebook, the tone changed. There were mentions of arguments, of decisions made in fear, of someone leaving and someone staying. He paused at a line underlined twice. "The horse remembers. That is my only hope." He shut the notebook, the words burning into him. "What does the horse remember?" he asked the dark room. As if in reply, faint hoofbeats sounded above him, slow and steady, like the horse was walking in circles right over his head. He looked back at the trunk, knowing he wasn't done, not even close. He placed the notebook aside and reached for the letters wrapped in plastic. They were sealed with tape along the edges as if someone wanted them protected for decades. He peeled one open and unfolded the pages. The handwriting wasn't his father's this time. It was smoother, more careful. It belonged to the same man from the photograph. "Your father and I disagreed again today. He thinks the truth will break the family. I think hiding it will break him." He read the line twice. The rest of the letter spoke about long days working the land, about the white horse learning commands faster than any animal the man had trained before. The tone was warm, almost trusting. But at the end, the letter shifted. Something changed in him. "He won't say what happened. I worry he's carrying something heavy, something he can't bring to light." He folded the letter slowly and opened another. Then another. Each one carried the same mix of hope and worry. Two men working the land side by side, yet drifting apart because of something unspoken. One letter was shorter than the rest. It said only, "If anything happens to me, follow the horse. He will lead you." His breath caught. This was the same message his father had written in a different way. Both men believed the horse knew something neither of them could say aloud. He closed the letters and turned toward the last object in the trunk, a wooden box no bigger than his palm. It had a faint marking carved into the top, the outline of a horse's head. Inside the box was a small silver tag shaped like a medallion. On it were scratched initials, H.T. He whispered, so his name was Henry. The name tasted familiar, like something he had heard as a child but forgotten. Above him, the hoofbeats stopped. Total silence. He held the medallion tightly and looked at the stairs. The horse wasn't making circles anymore. It was waiting. He felt it in the silence. Something important was about to surface, whether he was ready or not. He climbed back up the stairs with the medallion in his fist, the air warming as he reached the surface. The horse stood a few feet away, facing him as if it had been standing guard the entire time. Its white coat caught the late afternoon light, making it look almost unreal. He held up the silver medallion. This belonged to Henry, didn't it? The horse didn't move, didn't flinch. But something in its quiet stare felt like agreement. He stepped toward it slowly. Why did my father hide all this? And why didn't he tell me who Henry really was? The horse turned and began walking toward the far edge of the ranch again. This time, the path curved around a cluster of cottonwood trees he hadn't noticed before. Their branches moved softly in the breeze, the leaves shining like dull coins in the fading light. As he followed, he felt something shift under his boot. He stopped and looked down. A metal ring stuck out of the ground, small, rusted, nearly swallowed by grass. He crouched and pulled. A square of earth lifted with it, revealing another hidden space, but this one was shallow, no more than a foot deep. Inside lay a folded tarp, a worn rope, and a mason jar filled with pieces of paper. He unscrewed the lid and pulled one out. It had a date written in faint pencil, followed by a single sentence. He didn't leave. He stayed because he feared what the truth would do. He unfolded another. I told Virgil this could end badly. He said some things were better forgotten. Virgil. His father. He stood there, jar in hand, feeling a cold pressure tighten inside his chest. These notes weren't written by someone escaping. They were written by someone trapped, someone who wanted to be found later. He looked at the horse. He didn't leave the ranch, did he? Something happened here. The horse took a slow step closer, lowering its head toward the open jar. The air felt heavier. He whispered, "Show me what I'm missing." The horse walked past him, heading deeper into the cottonwoods. The space between the trees narrowed, the light dimming as branches crossed overhead. He followed with careful steps, his heart beating harder than before. The air felt thick as if the land itself was holding its breath. The horse stopped near a patch of uneven earth where the ground dipped slightly. Nothing looked unusual at first, but the soil was darker here, turned, disturbed, not settled like the rest of the field. The horse pawed the ground once, then stepped back. He knelt and touched the soil. It crumbled softer than it should have. "This isn't natural," he whispered. He looked around for a fallen branch and used it to scrape away the top layer. Under just a few inches of dirt, something flat and wooden appeared. A board. Not old enough to belong underground by accident. He cleared more soil until he uncovered the outline of a wooden lid placed horizontally, almost like someone had set it there in a hurry. His hands shook as he widened the area. When he finally lifted the board, a wave of cold air escaped from the hollow beneath. Inside was a small wooden crate wrapped with a faded cloth. He pulled it out and set it on the grass. The cloth smelled of earth and time. When he unwrapped it, he found a stack of papers tied with rope. The top page held only 2 words, written in rushed, slanted handwriting. "For my son." His breath stopped. He untied the rope with numb fingers and opened the stack. The first letter started immediately, without greeting. "I was wrong to think silence would protect you. Henry trusted me. I failed him." He blinked hard, reading the next lines. "He never left this ranch. He stayed because we argued about something he found. Something I believed would destroy the land. We both made choices out of fear." A sound escaped him, half disbelief, half pain. "Dad, what did you do?" He read the last lines of the letter. "If the horse brought you here, then the truth is ready to rise. Don't turn away. You deserve to know everything I couldn't face." He lowered the letter and stared at the cottonwoods around him. The branches barely moved now, as if the whole grove wanted him to keep reading. The horse stepped closer, its breath soft against the back of his arm. He swallowed hard and picked up the next page. Henry's handwriting filled it. "I found something under the ridge near the old fence line. It looked ordinary, but it wasn't. Your father said we should leave it alone. I said people had a right to know." He looked up toward the ridge in the distance. He had walked past it dozens of times as a kid and never noticed anything special. But Henry had. And his father had tried to stop him. He kept reading. "Virgil wasn't angry with me. He was scared. He thought outsiders would come, take the land apart piece by piece. He said the ranch wouldn't survive that kind of attention. I told him truth mattered more than land." He turned the page with shaking hands. "That night he came back to the barn. We argued again. I told him I wasn't leaving until he agreed to show the county what I found. He said he needed time. Then the writing changed, uneven, rushed. If anything happens to me, the horse knows. He always remembers the way." His eyes burned as he folded the letter. He could feel his father's fear in every line. Not cruelty. Not hatred. Fear. The kind that destroys good decisions. He looked at the horse. Where did Henry go that night? The horse turned its head toward the ridge again, stamping the ground once. A clear answer. He placed the letters inside the crate and carried it with him as he followed the horse through the trees. Every step felt heavier, every breath tighter. He wasn't just walking the ranch now. He was walking through his father's regrets, through a story buried deeper than the soil itself. Up ahead, the ridge waited, quiet and still, holding whatever truth both men had died trying to protect. The climb toward the ridge was slow, not because it was steep, but because every step felt like walking into a memory he never lived. The horse moved ahead of him, steady and patient, glancing back every few steps to be sure he followed. The crate of letters pressed against his side with each step, reminding him why he was out here, why he couldn't turn back now. Near the top, the ground flattened into a small clearing he had never noticed before. The grass here grew in uneven patches, as if something had disturbed the soil long ago. The horse stopped at the center of the clearing and lowered its head, pawing lightly at a patch of dirt. He knelt beside it. "Here," he whispered. The horse stepped back. He dug with his hands first, then with a broken piece of wood lying nearby. A few inches down he found something hard, metal. He brushed away more soil and uncovered an old toolbox, dented and rusted. It didn't look like something left behind by accident. He lifted it out and placed it on the grass. The latch opened with a short snap. Inside were tools, but not ordinary ones. There were sample jars, old measuring instruments, and sheets of paper rolled into tight tubes. He opened one carefully. It was a rough map of the ranch, hand-drawn, with markings around the ridge and notes scribbled in the corner. "Copper deposits," he read aloud. "Small quantities. Worth studying." Another sheet had Henry's handwriting on it. "This could bring people here. Too many. Virgil says it will ruin everything. I say it will save us." He leaned back staring at the map. So this was the discovery they fought about. Not treasure. Not danger. Just land, land that held value his father feared would attract outsiders. He whispered, "You didn't want to lose the ranch, Dad, but what did that fear cost him? What did it cost Henry?" He turned to the horse, whose eyes held the same calm weight they always did. And then he saw it, another object wedged in the corner of the toolbox. A folded piece of leather tied with thin rope. He pulled it out. Inside was a small, cracked notebook with Henry's final entry written unevenly across the page. "If I don't return, follow the horse. He'll take you to where I last stood. The truth is there." He closed the cracked notebook and looked around the clearing, trying to imagine Henry standing here all those years ago, holding the same papers, fighting the same fear. The wind moved softly across the ridge, brushing the grass in slow waves. The horse stepped closer and nudged his arm, gentle but firm, as if saying, "Look again." He walked a few feet farther, studying the ground. There was a dip in the earth, a small hollow he hadn't noticed before. He knelt and pressed his hand into it. The soil felt loose. Recently disturbed long ago, but still different from the surrounding land. He began clearing it with careful hands. Inch by inch, the ground gave way until the shape beneath became clear. Another wooden board, thinner than the last ones he'd found. This one had faded writing scratched across the top. His chest tightened. He lifted the board and found a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside were two items, a broken pocket knife and a folded letter. The knife had initials carved into the handle, HT. He unfolded the letter slowly. It was written in his father's hand, the strokes uneven, as if they had been made during a moment of shaking remorse. "I didn't mean for you to stay behind. I told you to wait until morning. I thought we would talk again. I thought we could choose a better way. But you walked into the ridge alone. You trusted the land more than your own safety. When you fell, I panicked. I should have called for help. I should have told the truth. Instead, I buried my fear and let the world believe you left. I failed you, Henry. And I failed my son by hiding everything." His vision blurred. The truth wasn't cruel, it was tragic. He looked at the horse and whispered, "You stayed because you remembered him." The horse lowered its head, touching his hand gently as if offering comfort. He closed the letter and stood, feeling something inside him settle. A weight lifting, not because the truth was easy but because it was finally known. He walked back toward the barn with the horse beside him, knowing the story wasn't about blame anymore. It was about understanding, about forgiveness waiting beneath years of silence. Moral lesson asterisk. Fear destroys truth, and silence deepens wounds. Only honesty, no matter how late, opens the path to healing.